Government waste, government waste, government waste. That is the topic of tonight's Byline. It's the day after tax day, the day we're all supposed to have filed our taxes by. I find it funny that it follows May Day. May Day follows tax day. Now, if you don't know, May Day is the international day to commemorate socialism. Kind of appropriate, isn't it? Suck all the money out of your wallet and then hold a giant parade to the glory of government spending. Except today, I am furious. And I am furious with every level of government I deal with over their abuse of my tax dollars. Oh, there's the Auditor General's report from the feds that came out yesterday, and we'll get to that. But that's only part of what has me furious. There's provincial problems, even local problems here in Ottawa at the city level. Try this on for a wise use of our tax dollars. We've got a green bin program in the city of Ottawa to collect organic waste. The idea is to compost the organic waste. My city signed a deal with a private company that they would process a certain amount of this organic waste, and the city would pay them whether the residents of Ottawa sent in that much waste or not. Of course, if we send in more, there's a penalty, but if we send in less, you're going to pay. Now, this company is rejecting a good chunk of the waste being sent, and we still have to pay. It's enough to make the blood boil. At the provincial level, we have a few stories from Ontario, and trust me, I could go across the country today with example after example, but let me just pick on Ontario. We all know that only governments can do certain things that are considered bad and evil and not to be done by the private sector, say like selling booze or gambling. Well, despite a supposed pay freeze in the public sector, the wages for the top 10 executives at the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, well, they jumped from $2.4 million in 2010 to $3.6 million last year. That's a 50% jump. And you just thought that the lottery was all about funding hospitals and schools. Now it's about funding fat cats, too. Rod Phillips, the CEO at Ontario Lottery and Gaming, he took home $672,989 in 2012. Almost $300,000 of that was in bonus pay. Then there's the gas plant issue. One canceled gas plant, originally said to cost $40 million, just $40 million to save some Liberal seats in the last election. It's now going to cost more than $300 million. Please, Premier Wynne, tell us what you know.
What I'm saying to you is that $40 million was the cost that I was told and that our caucus and our government was told would be the cost associated with relocating the Oakville plant.
And like me, the opposition is furious, but guys, she says she's sorry.
Why aren't you taking responsibility for this? Why aren't you apologizing to the people of this province? Why aren't you here today saying I'm sorry? This is not Dalton McGuinty's mess. It is the Liberal Party of Ontario's mess, and it is your mess too.
Okay. So I have said I regret this situation. I have said it repeatedly. I regret the situation, and I have said that I take responsibility to make sure that this never happens again.
So now these guys who can't control the cost of gas plants that they cancel for political reasons and can't control the pay of lottery bosses, well, they've decided that they can control your auto insurance premiums and will order a 15% cut in rates in the budget. They say this will save the average driver $225 a year. Look, I'd like lower rates as much as the next guy, but I don't think that, well, a government that can't keep its own book should be telling others how to run their business. In fact, I don't think it's the government's job to dictate prices to private business. And maybe, just maybe, Premier Wynne, the average household could save $225 per year if you stopped wasting money and gave us all a tax break. Now on to the feds. You've likely heard of the big ticket item from the Auditor General. Apparently the feds cannot account for $3.1 billion allocated for counterterrorism. Neither the Auditor General nor Treasury Board President Tony Clement actually believe the money was stolen or misused, but gosh darn it, they just don't know what it was spent on. Between 2001 and 2009, there was $12.9 billion allocated to 35 different departments and agencies for counterterrorism, and $3.1 billion is missing. Now, you do realize that this means the money went missing over 3 different administrations. The Chrétien, Martin, and Harper governments all had a hand in this, proving my point that no government is good at managing your money. They all, to varying degrees, will misspend it, or in this case, lose it, maybe. The report from AG Michael Ferguson actually says the money could have been spent on the right projects. It might have been spent elsewhere or never spent at all. They don't know, folks. They just don't know. Getting less attention, but really just as bad, maybe even worse, is the EI problem uncovered. Ferguson looked at EI spending and found that, well, there's about $300 million in overpayments each year, including $110 million in fraud. Spread that over 10 years, you have the same problem, roughly the same amount as the counterterrorism lost money, except we know where this money is, and we know that it's being put in the wrong place. In some cases, people are paid too much money. In fact, there's more than $600 million on the record in overpayment over the last couple of years, and the government does not have the resources to collect on it. As for the fraud, do you remember it was just a couple of months ago that the opposition and the media, one and the same so often, well, they were really going nuts over the Harper government cracking down on fraud in the EI system. Back in February, NDP leader Thomas Mulcair, he claimed that the idea there was widespread fraud in EI, well, that was simply false. And he compared attempts to track down and crack down on fraud to thugs sent out by Haitian dictator Papadoc Duvalier. Really, Tom? $110 million in fraud per year is nothing, Tom? To me, that's real money. To the NDP, something to ignore. To me, $40 million to cancel a gas plant is a lot of money, never mind the hundreds of millions that it will actually cost. We need to rein in government spending, but you cannot trust government to do it. It's why we need smaller government, not more efficient government, because there's no such thing as efficient government. And that's the byline. You're about to travel to another dimension, a dimension of disbelief for eyes, ears, and mind. A journey through a terrifying land where apologists know no boundaries. Your next stop, the Liberal Zone.
I just want to say this, Mr. Speaker. I will appear before the committee this afternoon, but whether I'm in this House, whether I'm in the hall speaking to media, whether I'm at an event in some part of the province, I always tell the truth, Mr. Speaker, the truth that I know. Absolutely.
Did you see her nose grow there? That's Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne telling people that I always tell the truth, except when I'm talking about the price of gas plants. I don't know if Warren Kinsella will be defending Wynne, but this time, Warren, I'm willing to let you kick the Harper government for their spending because I am furious with all of them for spending right now.
Auditor General, okay, we've been talking about attack ads for the past 2 weeks. I have designed my own attack ad for Justin Trudeau. Here you go, Justin. Harper lost $3 billion. There you go. Look at that. That costs you nothing. There. That's the kind of ad you run right there.
Now, in this would not help the Harper government because this is going to stick to them. This $3 billion, and you're right, it's lost. There's no allegation that it's misspent. It's just we don't know what happened.
Where
to
did
it.
it go? And
but hold on.
It relates to security.
It won't help them, but this goes to my point about how no government can spend money properly. It goes over 3 administrations. This goes back to the Chrétien era, the Martin era, and the Harper era.
And the Harper guys said, we're going to fix up the mess these other guys created, and we're going to make the Canadian homeland safer.
Money. Now, Kathleen Wynne. She appears before committee yesterday. Kathleen Wynne appears before committee yesterday and is asked about this spending. You know, when did you know it was going to be more than $40 million? And she said, well, we were told a range between 33 and 166 million. Who goes into a bank and says, I'd like a loan. Our business is going to spend between 33 and 166 million. Can you give us a loan? That's not going to happen.
No, I'd like that. Listen, here's my rule of thumb. This is free of charge. If you're a prime minister or you're a premier, you never volunteer to go before a parliamentary committee. Ever, ever, ever. Because there's no upside. There's no win that you can possibly get out of that, no pun intended. You are only going to get marked up. And that's what happened to Kathleen Wynne yesterday. I don't know why her staff agreed to that, because it did not help her case. And in fact, it has now created pressure on the Ontario NDP to possibly vote down to topple this government, notwithstanding the fact that the government is trying to give the NDP what it wants.
Well, except, okay, they're trying to give the NDP what it wants. This sticks in my craw. Charles Sousa goes out yesterday and says, we are going to force a reduction in auto insurance premiums by 15%. Now, I'd love lower rates as much as the next guy. But this is an industry that the rates are where they are, partly because of the huge amount of regulation that goes on to the industry. And then this guy, Sousa, whose own government he's been part of for ages, cannot balance their books. They can't control the huge salary increases for the guys at the Lottery Corporation. They can't figure out how much a power plant costs. They're going to tell the auto industry, the insurance industry, what their premium should be? Give me a break.
And then that is the problem. I mean, politicians of all stripes all the time always have credibility issues with the public when they say we're going to save you money. The public has a tendency not to believe it. But you put your finger on the problem the wind guys have got is because of gas plants, anything they're promising on youth unemployment, on auto insurance, on anything is called into question because of this overlay of gas plants. But on the auto insurance thing, the thing that, and I'm the liberal, you're the conservative, but the thing that amazed me yesterday is, I mean, is this like wage and price controls? Is this a government telling the private sector, here's what your price is going to be? And I don't even know, is that constitutional or are they allowed to do that?
Well, no, they will do that, and other governments have been able to. We're almost out of time, but let me ask you this. If I showed up and said, I'm now the controller for the Ontario government, Premier Wynne, Minister Sousa, you have to cut taxes across the board by 15%, but not change services. Could that be done at the government level?
I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult to do when you have a minority government. Right now,
but it couldn't be done without hurting services at some point, or finding savings somewhere. But that's what they're going to do. They're going to tell the insurance industry they have to be absolute magicians. It's ridiculous. Warren, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for talking sense today on May Day. On May Day of all day. You socialist on May Day, sounding like a conservative. Stick around. We're not done yet. More to come.